involve her fleeing the house and slamming the door behind her. She'd visited multiple alternate worlds in order to obtain books. She was capable of dealing with different customs and knew all sorts of polite manners. But she didn't want to serve herself up as dish of the day. "Nobody actually said there were going to be vampires attending," she said mildly. "I wasn't expecting this." "Bah!" another of the elderly women snorted. Irene was the youngest person in the crowded room, trapped in a nest of chairs and little tables that were encrusted with ornaments. The thick curtains were drawn tightly against the night outside. The tea was cold. The cakes were stale. The atmosphere was thick and heavy, and if it hadn't been for the fragrance of the log fire, Irene had a suspicion that it would have smelled even worse. I don't wish to sound harsh, but in my day, a young woman knew her duty. If this Miss... She trailed off, trying to remember Irene's name.
"Miss Winters,"
Mr. Harper said. His hair was a grizzled white that retreated in a pronounced widow's peak, and his eyes were black as coal, sunk deep behind half-closed eyelids. He hunched in his chair, tilting forward like a vulture scouting for prey. And whenever he spoke, he bared his fangs. The one highlight of the evening so far was that he wasn't sitting next to Irene. He was apparently one of the minor vampires attached to the household. The more powerful ones hadn't risen yet that evening. Small mercies.
"So nice to have some young blood present at our little soiree."
Of course, if Irene had known that it was going to be a soiree, let alone have vampires present, she wouldn't have attended. Which was probably why they hadn't told her. She'd thought this was going to be just a straight book exchange. The negotiations had all gone through smoothly, and she'd been looking forward to collecting a new book for the library's collection, without violence, drama, or running down corridors screaming. Apparently, she'd been mistaken. I had absolutely no idea I'd be mixing with such important people when I called, she fluttered, putting on her best air of innocence. I only wanted to exchange these books, as we agreed. The books, yes, as we discussed. It was the first time the woman at the far end of the room had spoken. The background whispers fell silent at her voice. She touched the red leather binding of the book in her lap. Her pale fingers were thin and wrinkled, given an artificial colour by the firelight. Indeed, I think we should discuss that in private. If you will all excuse us for a moment. She didn't bother pausing for any possible disagreement. Miss Winters, do take a little stroll with me. Irene put down her cup and saucer, and the scalpel, and rose to her feet in a rustle of skirts, picking up her briefcase. She dressed politely and soberly in response to her invitation, in a dove-grey jacket and skirt with dark green trimmings. Given the circumstances, she was wishing she'd accessorized it with garlic, silver, and running shoes. Delighted, she murmured, and followed the other woman out of the room. Along the corridor and up the stairs, old-style gas lamps burned, rather than the newer ether lamps. Dark portraits gazed out from gilded ornamental frames. Irene could see the family nose and brows in many of them, mirroring the haughty face of the woman ahead of her. She really wished she hadn't come here. She'd just wanted to exchange a book, rather than stealing it for once. Her virtue was not being rewarded. Quite the opposite. Mrs. Walker, referred to as Lady Walker by the rest of the household, even if Irene hadn't come across any trace of a title when she was researching the family, came to a stop in front of a particularly dramatic picture. She turned to look at Irene. Her eye patch hid her right eye, but the left eye was considering, thoughtful, evaluating. Since Irene...